According to the traditional calculation, we are deep in the Kali Yuga, with 427,000 years of darkness still to go. The age of spiritual blindness, where truth is forgotten and the material world is all that remains. But there is a problem with these numbers. A 19th century Indian sage, Sri Yukteswar, identified a mathematical error that had been passed down for centuries. And when you correct the math, the entire picture shifts. We are not in the Kali Yuga. We are roughly 300 years into the ascending Dwapara Yuga, an age of expanding consciousness, not contracting darkness. Imagine living your entire life believing you were born near the beginning of the worst possible age and that things would only get worse from here. That is precisely the spiritual inheritance the traditional Yuga calculation handed down. 4 ages: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali, descending like a staircase into darkness. Satya Yuga, the golden age, at the top. Human beings of immense longevity and direct spiritual perception, living in harmony with cosmic law. Then Treta, where virtue diminishes by a quarter. Then Dwapara, where half remains. Then Kali Yuga, the age of iron, of ignorance, of maximum contraction, where humanity loses all but a sliver of its original capacity. The numbers are staggering. According to the traditional reckoning, the Kali Yuga alone lasts 432,000 years. We entered it around 3102 BC, which means by that calculation we have more than 427,000 years of darkness ahead. Just imagine what that does to a human mind that absorbs it. It installs a kind of cosmic despair. Not the despair of a difficult week or bad decade, but the despair of an epoch. The sense that the architecture of reality itself is tilted against you. That darkness isn't a temporary condition, but a structural feature of time. That the best you can hope for is to endure. And it would be one thing if this were merely an abstract theological claim, but it isn't. The traditional Yuga timeline maps almost perfectly onto a modern intuition that many people carry without ever having heard of the Yugas at all. The feeling that things are getting worse, that civilization is declining, that some essential quality has been lost and will never return. You see this idea everywhere now. In the apocalyptic end-time fantasies, in the nostalgia for ancient golden ages, in the belief that the past was wise and the future is only decline. Even among people with no connection to Eastern cosmology, the doom narrative keeps surfacing. And it's not irrational. The evidence for decline is easy to find. Nobody trusts institutions anymore. People can't focus. Everyone feels alone. The natural world is under strain. If you wanted to build the case that we are in a dark age, you would have no shortage of material. But here's what Sri Yukteswar saw, and that changes the entire picture. The feeling of decline might be real, but the timeline that frames it is false. Before we dive in, if this kind of content resonates with you, Come find me at luminaryflow.com. There's a free gift waiting for you. You'll find the link in the top comment below. Now let's get back into it. Sri Yukteswar was not an academic. He was a yogi, a direct disciple of the immortal Babaji, and the teacher of Paramhansa Yogananda, who would later bring the Kriya Yoga tradition to the West. Yukteswar lived in the 19th century, but his frame of reference reached across millennia. At Babaji's direction, Yukteswar wrote a small book called The Holy Science. Its stated purpose was to demonstrate the hidden unity between Eastern and Western scripture, to show that the Bible and the Vedas were describing the same reality from different cultural angles. But to unlock that unity, Yukteswar had to first correct a fundamental error in the way the yugas had been calculated. The error was deceptively simple. In the traditional text, the yuga durations are given in divine years, a unit representing 360 solar years. The text described each half of the Kali Yuga as lasting 1200 divine years. Multiply 1200 by 360 and you get 432,000 solar years. The same multiplier applies to other ages, yielding the massive traditional timeline. But Yukteswar recognized that this multiplier was a transmission error. The original sages did not intend divine years, they intended solar years. The 1200-year figure for the second half of the Kali Yuga was literal. 1200 actual years, not 432,000. When you remove the multiplier, the entire cycle drops from millions of years to 24,000. And when you trace that 24,000 year cycle backward from known astronomical markers, particularly the precession of the equinoxes, the timeline resolves into something unexpected. The bottom of the descending arc was not in our future, it was in our past, around 500 AD. Consider what that means. The deepest point of spiritual blindness, the moment when consciousness was most fully identified with matter, when direct perception of finer forces was most thoroughly lost, occurred roughly 1500 years ago. And since that point, the arc has been climbing. Dwapara Yuga, the ascending energy age, began around 1700 AD. We are now approximately 3 centuries into an ascent that will continue for another 2100 years before the next transition. We are not living near the beginning of a dark age. We are living early in the ascent out of one. Yukteswar described Dwapara Yuga as the age of energy, an era in which humanity would progressively discover and master the fine forces that underlie the material world. He wrote this in the late 19th century. Within decades of his writing, Einstein published his theory of relativity. Quantum mechanics dismantled the Newtonian picture of the clockwork material universe. Radio, electricity, nuclear energy, the forces Yukteswar described as a characteristics of Dwapara, became the organizing principles of civilization. He was describing an age that had barely begun. Not the specific discoveries that would come, but where they would lead. And they led exactly where he said. Yukteswar was not a prophet. He was a yogi who had developed the capacity to perceive the structure of time directly. He wasn't guessing, he was reporting. Yukteswar corrected the timeline. But a corrected timeline only tells you when. It doesn't explain the purpose of the descent, or why the ascent is not simply a return to the glory of the past. That question was Sri Aurobindo's lifetime work. And his answer changes the meaning behind the entire concept of yugas. Aurobindo's core framework rests on two movements, involution and evolution. Involution is the descending arc, spirit hiding itself progressively deeper in matter, until it reaches the point of maximum concealment. Evolution is the ascending arc, spirit reawakening within matter, emerging back toward itself, carrying everything it learned in the descent. The traditional model already implies this. Satya descends into Treta, Treta into Dwapara, Dwapara into Kali. But the traditional model frames it as a loss. Each age is worse than the one before. The light grows dimmer, direct perception fades, and the golden age is behind you. Aurobindo saw something different. The descent has a very special purpose. It is a curriculum. In Satya Yuga, the golden age, consciousness live in direct, unmediated connection to the divine. Beings don't reason their way to truth, they perceive it directly. The way you perceive the sun is warm without needing a thermometer. Unity is not a philosophy, it is the medium of existence. But there is a problem. Something very important is missing. If you have never experienced separation, you cannot choose unity. You can only dwell in it. A fish doesn't know it's in water, not because water isn't real, but because the fish has never been without it. The fish can't value water. It can't recognize it. It can't return to it after absence because absence has never occurred. Satya Yuga means unity without self-awareness. The unity is real, but it is simply the condition of being alive, not something anyone has to discover or even consider. Now fast forward through the descending arc. Treta, Dwapara, and finally Kali Yuga, the bottom of the curve, the maximum contraction of consciousness into matter. What happens here? Consciousness forgets itself so completely that it believes it's only matter. It believes it is a separate self, a lone I, cut off from every other I, from nature, from the divine, from anything beyond what the physical senses can confirm. This is normally described as the worst possible state, the dark age, the age of maximum delusion. And in one sense it is. Direct perception of finer realities is buried. The filter is at its tightest. But Aurobindo saw something else in the darkness. The descent into separation produced something that did not exist before. The fully individuated self. The sense of being a distinct, autonomous I. A consciousness that knows itself as separate and therefore knows itself at all. You cannot have self-awareness without first experiencing self as separate. You cannot develop inner life without first encountering a boundary between inside and outside. The descending arc, all 12,000 years of it, built that boundary. The Kali Yuga was simply its sharpest point. Individual identity, personal conscience, the capacity to stand apart from the group and say, I do not agree, I see differently. I choose otherwise. None of this was possible in Satya Yuga. Not because Satya Yuga was lacking, because the curriculum hadn't run yet. A child cannot choose to come home until the first left the house. The descent was not a fall, it was a dive. Consciousness plunging into the density of matter so that it could experience what separation felt like. And the ascent is not recovery, it's integration. The individual self, forged in the darkness of Kali Yuga, does not dissolve when the light returns. It wakes up carrying the felt knowledge of what it means to be alone, to be separate, to be an I. And that knowledge allows it to do something the Golden Age never could. To choose unity consciously, with full recognition of what is being chosen and what the alternative feels like. This is what Aurobindo called the supramental, the next stage of consciousness, the stage the ascending arc is moving toward. But it is not Satya Yuga perception again like before. It's something genuinely new. Golden Age direct knowing, the unmediated perception of reality integrated with full individual self-awareness, both simultaneously. The unity without the loss of the I without the illusion of separation. Each turn of the spiral lands higher than the one before. The arc returns, but never to the same point. What comes next integrates what came before, rather than erasing it. This is the philosophical upgrade that saves the Yuga model from mere cyclical fatalism. Without Aurobindo, you get a circle. The Golden Age returns, but as a repetition. Nothing genuinely new ever emerges from the descent. With Aurobindo, you get a spiral. The descent produced something valuable, the individuated self that can choose its return, and the ascent carries the self into a state that has never existed before. The 427,000 years of darkness were never real, they were a miscalculation. But the darkness itself, the descent, the forgetting, the maximum contraction was real. And it was necessary, because you cannot consciously return to something you never knew you had, and you cannot know you had it until you've lost it. The Kali Yuga was how consciousness learned what separation feels like, so that the return becomes a conscious phase with the individual's full cooperation. So where does this leave you? If the correction is right, if we are 3 centuries into ascending Dwapara Yuga, then the chaos you feel is not the end of a dark age, it's the turbulence of the beginning of a new one. Picture adolescence. The teenager who suddenly starts doubting every authority they once accepted without question. The beliefs they inherited about family, religion, culture no longer hold. The young mind starts pushing back against everything and everyone. But this is natural. This is how they become independent. The capacity to question is the beginning of the capacity to see for yourself. Now scale that to a civilization. The institutions that held authority during the descending arc, religious hierarchies, political systems, the old explanations of reality, are losing their grip. The consciousness they were designed for is changing. The ascending Dwapara energy is awakening the individual's capacity for direct discernment. And direct discernment makes inherited authority feel hollow. Both yugas coexist in the sense that the Kali Yuga structures haven't disappeared overnight. They linger in habit, in institutions, in old beliefs people still carry. But the ascending current is already active. You can feel it in how many people are now searching outside traditional religion, in the hunger for direct experience over second-hand doctrine, in the suspicion, increasingly common, that the reality available to the senses is not the whole of what is real. Even the loneliness epidemic and the rise of narcissism become legible in this frame. They are not evidence that we are declining further into darkness. They are symptoms of the separate self fully formed, the Kali Yuga's final gift, now persisting into an age that is asking for reintegration. The ego was built up so completely that it now mistakes itself for the whole of identity. Dwapara's task is not to destroy that ego, but to place it in a larger context. To recognize that the separate self is real, but it's not the only real thing. This is where Aurobindo's practical demand lands. An ascending age does not carry you automatically. It raises the stakes. The current is moving in a direction that supports expansion, but you can still resist it. And resistance to an ascending current generates a particular kind of suffering. It feels like being left behind, like the world is accelerating away from you, like the old strategies that once worked, accumulation, control, insulation, no longer produce the security they promised. That suffering is not the Kali Yuga, it's the friction of trying to move backward through a forward-moving current. The practical question Dwapara asks of you is this: can you become your own authority? Not by reflexively rejecting every external source. That is not discernment, it's just reacting. The teenager who defines themselves entirely by opposition to the parent is not free. They are still defined by what they reject. Becoming your own authority means developing the internal capacity to discern, to see what is actually there, rather than what the descending age taught people to believe. It means taking responsibility for your own perception rather than outsourcing it to an institution or a text or a teacher. The teacher can give you ideas, the text can describe, but the seeing is yours alone. And this is the most valuable insight from Yukteswar's correction. The Kali Yuga was a necessary descent, consciousness diving into matter so completely that it could eventually climb back, carrying something the Golden Age never possessed: the knowledge of what separation feels like, and the conscious choice to return. The age has moved from involution to evolution, and its demands have changed with it. The work is no longer survival, it is the individual learning to trust their own perception and to act on it without waiting for permission. The numbers were wrong. The Dark Age is behind us. We are 3 centuries into the Dwapara Yuga, the age of energy, of finer forces, of expanding perception. And this age has its own demands. It is telling the individual, now it's time to grow up. Here is what changes when the math is corrected. The 427,000 years of Kali Yuga ahead of us, gone. They were a transmission error, a number that passed through enough hands that no one stopped to ask whether it made sense. We left the Kali Yuga 300 years ago. The question is not whether the age is getting darker anymore. The question is whether you're moving with it or against it. And the current age is not asking for belief. It's not asking for allegiance to a teacher or a text or a tradition. It is asking for something considerably harder, that you trust your own perception, that you stop letting an authority outside yourself decide what is real, that you take responsibility for the one thing no age, ascending or descending, can supply, your own individual sight. Sri Yukteswar corrected the numbers. Sri Aurobindo showed that the descent produced something the Golden Age alone could not. But nobody can do the seeing for you. That part is yours. If this resonated with you, come find me at luminaryflow.com. There's a free gift waiting for you there, and you'll also receive my newsletter with thoughts and inspiration behind each video. You'll find the link in the top comment below.